Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be checking out the Eachine UZ65. This is a brushless 65mm tiny whoop with a difference, because they have managed to cram in the HQ 35mm props, whereas most 65mm models are running 31mm props. The larger prop does mean that the frame is just slightly bigger than your average 65mm tiny whoop. And the frame looks like they have taken a Mobula6 and shrunk it down, which I was never a fan of because these curved struts made the frame stronger, but every model using this type of design suffered from yaw washout and random snaps when recovering from aggressive acro maneuvers. And I think it's because the airflow gets disrupted too much, which is why I was thrilled to see the Mobula6 retain a V1 style frame. It does look like this one has been previously flown because I can see a scratch mark on one of the protectors. And the props run really close to the frame as well, so that could be just from general flying. The motors are Eachine branded with an 802 stator and 19,000 kV. Unlike the Mobula6, they don't offer a 25,000 kV option, but that's most likely because the bigger blade would draw too much current. The motors are soldered directly to the flight controller, probably to keep the weight down and reduce any resistance that a connector would cause. The model's dry weight is 22 grams, which is 2 grams heavier than the Mobula6. It might not sound like a lot, but it is at this size. You get given 4 300 mAh high volt 1S lipos, and with one of those fitted, the model's all-up weight is 29 grams. The blades are in a props out configuration, although I'm yet to see props out fix any yaw washout issues. The flight controller seems to be a variation of the Crazy Bee F4, modified so that it curves in the same shape as the protectors. It consists of BL Halias 4-in-1 ESCs rated to 5 amps and an F4 flight controller. It's also got a built-in SPI receiver available with FrSky D8 or the FlySky protocol. But there are options for an external Crossfire or Spectrum receiver, and with there being a spare UART, you could add one yourself. But any extra weight is seriously going to affect the model's performance, so bear that in mind. The specs say that the flight controller can actually handle 2S, but I'd be very surprised if this motor and prop combination can. They are using a solid pin PH2 connector, which is about as good as it gets with these 1S models. The BT2 connectors just draw too much current for the capacity of these small lipos, in my opinion, and still damage them. But I made a video on how to take care of your 1S lipos, which I'll add a card to because it's working. My original Happy Model lipos that came with the Mobula6 are like brand new, and they have had a lot of use in the 7 months I've owned them. Anyways, onto the Betaflight setup of the UZ65, and it was really subpar in my opinion, but I guess a model setup is subjective. First of all, you need a really slimline USB data cable, which you are not given in the package because the USB port runs really close to the battery tray. It came flash with Betaflight version 4.1.1, motor stop was turned on, and air mode wasn't set up at all, not even on a switch. Neither was D-shot commands for a lost model alarm. Now, I know this is a tiny model, so using D-shot commands for a lost model alarm won't be very loud, but it's better than nothing, especially when the grass is so long as it is outside. The mode sliders needed changing for FrSky, even though this is an FrSky version. It had arming on auxiliary 1, then auxiliary 2's first position was acro with no air, and then its second position was angle with no air mode. But the slider was still in the wrong place, so out of the box you would just get acro. Flip over after crash was fine on auxiliary 4, but I added a lost model alarm on auxiliary 3. The only good thing about the setup was that JESC had been set up, although the ESC protocol was set to D-shot 600 instead of 300, but I've left it to see what happens. They have their own PIDs in there, so I'll try those, but the rates hadn't been touched, so I changed those to my liking. The VTX is separate to the board this time and is switchable up to 100 milliwatts through the on-screen display, but the range of the built-in SPI receiver will only be around 80 meters anyways, so the extra power is a little bit wasted. It's using a micro UFL connector as well, which has popped off a couple of times just handling it due to the antenna being forced to face the wrong way, so in a crash it can pop off as well, so it could do with some liquid tape to hold it down. The VTX also stops the camera angle being able to go completely flat for flying in tight indoor spaces, although the canopy is improved with this front brace, so fingers crossed there should be less jello than the Mobula6. The camera is the Runcam Nano 3 with a 4:3 aspect ratio. The model comes in a nice pouch to store it in, and you get given a spare set of props along with a prop remover, some spare screws and a Phillips screwdriver. You're also given a manual which is fairly extensive, but it's worth learning the Betaflight basics, otherwise you will run into trouble trying to get it into the air. You also get given a charger that switches between high volt and a normal charge. So I thought the best thing to do would be to take the Mobula6 out first, seeing as we're going to be comparing the UZ65 to this one the most, and see what the power difference is like. So this is the 25,000 kV version, and I'm using the stock Happy Model LiPo, which is 300 milliamps, and it's charged to a high volt. So let's go for a punch out. We'll try and get it as close as possible. Disappears very quickly. A little bit of wind here today as well, I think around about 16 kilometers per hour. Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of punch, this one. And flick it into acro mode as well. That's where this one shines, in acro mode. Unfortunately, I don't have my sports haul to see how good the UZ65 flies without any wind whatsoever, but those are the cards that I've been dealt. So yeah, I've got a good idea of the power of this one, so let's check out the UZ65. Okay, this is the UZ65. Leaps up into the air, listening for any rattles. There's a slight zinging there, so I always find that with Eachine. You know, it's hard to tell whether they're using the same parts as Happy Model, but slight zinging. I think it might be those props catching on the protectors. They run so close. But anyways, let's see what the power is like with the UZ65. Oh yeah, definitely less power. So for fast racing, whether in an indoor sports hall or even outside, this one is going to be slower. Might be more efficient, but you know what? When it comes to these tiny whoops, at 65mm size, I like to just fly them around the house. And if you've got too much power, then it can be tricky to do that, to make the small gaps. If you haven't got a huge house, that is. Let's try acro. It's flying acro fine. I mean, you know, it's no slouch, but the Happy Model Mobula6 just disappears when you go up on the throttle. Both charged to a high volt. I'll show you it again. Full throttle. Yeah, no slouch, but really have to keep an eye on the Mobula6, whereas this one a little bit more docile. It doesn't disappear as fast. Yeah, definitely something catching there though. I think it is the props on the protectors. Not hearing any oscillations though, other than that slight buzzing sound, so let's get and do some FPV with this guy. Now, it might not have looked like it from the GoPro footage, but we're on board with the UZ65 here, and I'm going to give it 100% throttle, and that's all that you get. So the GoPro is not giving the best perspective when it comes to comparing the power between these two models, but I knew straight away when I went up on the throttle with the UZ65 that it had less power. So we're going for 100% throttle again, and a backflip, and watch this, boom, snap! It's doing all of that on its own. So yeah, not great at acro, and the reason it's doing that is because the model is too heavy and it doesn't have enough power to recover from those aggressive maneuvers. We're going to go again, so 100% throttle, backflip, and then into an inverted yaw spin, and snap, did all of that on its own. So if you were a beginner pilot and tried that, you could possibly crash doing those type of maneuvers. Where this model did fly nice was in a straight line in acro, very nimble there, so no complaints there. But yeah, if you want to do acro, 100% throttle here, so backflip, and I tried to come out of the maneuver less aggressively, so you can actually make these models look like they fly nice if you know how to sort of come out of a particular maneuver, but I tend to find that not being very fun, whereas the Mobula6, you can throw anything at it and you don't get those jaggedy, snappy maneuvers. But anyways, let's look at some positives here. The camera is definitely performing better outside in sunny conditions than the Mobula6. There is minimal amount of jello, and I put that down to that front strut brace. There's no interference through the video feed whatsoever, whether from RF noise or the ESCs. There's always a pigeon down that corner there. I'm not sure why, but you know what they say, never ask questions you don't want to know the answer to. This is where the UZ65 is great. Now, I normally wouldn't take an analog model in here, but I've flown the DJI system so much through here that I know where all of the ghost branches are now, and I have to say the VTX did perform very well. Now, we do have that high camera angle, so I am struggling a little bit to sort of see the horizon, but I know my way around here now. So yeah, I've got it slowed down there. RSSI, yeah, in the 50s, in the 40s, but like I say, you're looking at around about 80 meters with this one. And you get a longer flight time with this one as well. So some 50 seconds over the Mobula6 at 3 minutes 34, and this is me trying out the turtle mode, and it works no problem. So let's switch to the Mobula6 now. You can see a lot more jello, but as I say, I tend to not fly these outside anyways. It's usually the indoor sports hall, but I'm throwing acro at it here, and no yaw washouts whatsoever. Plenty more power, as you can see. I'm not actually going that high up on the throttle, but I think I do at some point, and you will see that it has got a fair amount more power. Here we go, so that's 100%, way more power, and you can see no snaps, no washouts. I'm able to do inverted yaw spins and not have to worry about the recovery there. So there you go. The Mobula6 flies better outside, and the flight time is shorter though. Look, 2 minutes 45 against 3 minutes 34. So I'm going to give you an indoor shot of the UZ65. I just about managed it around the house, but the camera angle, again, it was pointed up a little bit too much, but I could just about manage it around the house. I really wished that they had done a little bit more work in trying to get that camera angle flat. Perhaps not so many people fly these models like I do in tight spaces in the house and try and get through small gaps, but the camera angle facing upwards made that a little bit more difficult. One thing I will say is that the UZ65 is going to be a lot more attainable because the Mobula6 is always out of stock. They can't make them quick enough because it is probably one of the best 65mm whoops that you can buy at the moment for flying indoors, so it's massively in demand. So if you wish to buy one of these, I'll put a link in the video description as well as in a pinned comment, and I'll leave you with some flying. I must apologize, we are decorating during this lockdown period, so things are a little bit messy, but as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.